A whole bunch of really cool topics converge with the District Sentinel. The District Sentinel, the website is District, as in District of Columbia, Sentinel as watcher.com. This is a news co-op. You've heard me talk on this program about co-ops as a new business model. It's how I wrapped up the book Threshold. The whole last chapter was Louise and I went to Mondragon in Spain and saw the world's largest worker-owned co-op. And then I went up to Madison, Wisconsin, and a Union Cab Company and Peninsula Manufacturing. And there's a whole bunch. I mean, it's like a paradise for worker co-ops there. This is a news co-op, and it's really cool. They're doing some great stuff. They're doing a crowdfunding campaign right now. It's an Indiegogo campaign that you can find that at districtsentinel.com too. But the co-founder of District Sentinel, and a fellow that I've worked with for a whole bunch of years, a whole lot of different capacities, from doing television to writing, is Sam Sachs. And he's sitting right next to me.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Sam, it's great to have you with us.
And you have inspired me on cooperatives as well. So, you know, part of this this idea, there's a little bit of touch of you in there, I'd say.
Uh-oh. So tell us about the District Sentinel. How did you guys get the idea? How did you get started? What do you do?
Sure. So the District Sentinel is based here in Washington, D.C. It's a news co-op, as you mentioned. We started at the end of last year, and we're covering institutions of power here in Washington, D.C. We found that the progressive news space, I mean, there's tons of progressive media out there, but the progressive news space, the newswire space, was a little bit lacking. And we figured we could fill that space by reporting hard news that's coming from Congress, that's coming from the White House, that's coming from executive agencies, and reporting on it, rather than focusing on, look, if you're interested in the sort of horse race politics about what Hillary Clinton's Chipotle choice will mean for independent voters, the District Sentinel isn't the place for you. Right. If you want to know what the Department of Justice is doing in terms of retaliating against whistleblowers, the District Sentinel is probably the place for you. So what we're doing is we're getting rid of the kind of palace intrigue, the horse race, and we're focusing on the hard news, what people in power are doing and for who in Washington.
Wow, powerful stuff. And in fact, I'm looking at the website right now, districtsentinel.com. Top story, Obama administration boosts TPP membership for slave labor hotbed. Right. This is Malaysia, right?
Yeah, and this is Malaysia, and this comes from Congress passing a trade promotion authority a few months ago, in which they included an amendment that any country that had a Tier 3 designation when it comes to human trafficking, which
means
is a nice
that
word
the country
for slavery,
basically allows slavery. Yeah.
Right. A Tier 3 designation would not be allowed to be in the TPP agreement. Malaysia had a Tier 3 designation, so the State Department came forward this week and conveniently lowered Malaysia's Tier 3 status to a Tier 2 status without any real evidence that Malaysia is doing anything about slavery. In fact, prosecutions for slavery in Malaysia have gone down over the last few years.
And that's not because slavery is going down.
That's not because slavery has gone down. It's continued to increase.
Yeah, amazing. Other stories. Let me just read some headlines and let you riff on some of these things. Well, we'll do that quickly, and then I want you to describe what a news co-op is.
Sure.
Actually, well, let's talk about what a news co-op is first. What is a news co-op?
So we figured that we could be more sustainable in the news industry, which is kind of a difficult industry to make it nowadays, given the internet and given everything like that. If we organize ourselves as a cooperative, it reduces overhead costs. We're not paying a giant CEO lots of money. We're a bunch of journalists that are in it together, focusing on the stories and trying to scrape by a living for us as well. The other interesting dynamic to the Sentinel is it's also a co-op that includes its readers, not just the journalists, but our readers. So rather than a news organization that's funded by Raytheon or giant corporations, if you go to thehill.com, which is a fairly decent website, they have their hand on the pulse of what's going on in Washington, D.C., but you'll notice that amid their articles, you'll find an article written by Raytheon bragging about their newest laser or something, and that's what's called sponsored content. Right. And you know, a lot of news websites nowadays have to get by on sponsored content, having to basically give the task of reporting stories to corporations.
So they run what are basically press releases and call them news.
Right, or you know, a guide to domestic manufacturing sponsored by Walmart or something like that. That I saw at a recent website. So we have organized this social network where our members can go log on and they can propose story ideas to us. And other members in the community can look at those story ideas, upvote them. And the ones that get the most votes and get the most attention and elicit the most debate on our website will actually go to Washington, D.C., go to Capitol Hill, go to senators, go to members of Congress, and take these issues to them and get their input on this thing to advance a story or to hold them accountable. And we're working with these democracy activists in Iceland who created this open source software called Your Priorities. They created it after the 2008 financial collapse in Iceland. And they did it to re-engage the citizenry in government. And in fact, they opened this platform to figure out how to spend $2 million in city improvement funds in Reykjavik. So people could log onto the website, suggest projects to spend this money on, and the ones that got the most attention, that's what the city government went to. This software has also been used in the United Kingdom to solicit responses about the national healthcare system there, what complaints people have, what can be fixed about it. It was used in Estonia after the government there was found to be engaged in mass corruption to sort of reinstill faith in that government by getting the citizenry involved. And now we're going to use it here in Washington, D.C. as a journalistic tool to connect our readers to lawmakers here in Washington, D.C., and actually report on the stories that they care about rather than the ones that the corporate media wants us to care about, I'd say.
Wow, wow. So one of my pet peeves, I walk by Mary Jo White's office every day, you know, the head of the Securities and Exchange Commission, and she could, with a single letter, she could require every publicly traded corporation in America to disclose publicly to their stockholders, which would be to the public, what political contributions they're making, and when, and and what political activity they're engaging in. And in fact, she could even go a step beyond that. I mean, that would just be transparency and disclosure. She could even go a step beyond that and say, you cannot do this unless you have the permission of your stockholders. I mean, and that's something that I'm really jazzed
that's
about.
Something that you don't see in the mainstream media right now. In the media is the fourth estate. The media pressures lawmakers, tells them what people care about, and actually gets them to act. So if nobody cares about what Mary Jo White can do about this, then she's not going to do anything about it. Right. Whereas if Thom, if you as a member, you could go on, post this request. Hey guys, stake out Mary Jo White, put a audio recorder in her face, and ask her a question about this issue, and get her on the record saying what she plans to do. And if enough people think that that's a good idea, we will go out and do that. I mean, our tagline is in DC, so you don't have to be. Right. So we're trying to reach out to people in Portland or wherever who can't afford to come to DC and who might be an independent journalist or an alternative magazine or newsletter, who can't afford to have a DC-based reporter or don't have the sort of access all the way across the country that we might have here, and we will carry that last mile for them and you said we're going to use this software. Aren't you already using it? So the software is right now we're kind of in this crowdfunding campaign that you mentioned before. The software exists. We're fine-tuning it right now to unveil it in the next week or so. Cool. And we'll have a whole platform up to where members can sign up. Now, as I was saying earlier, and so that we don't have to be dependent on corporations like Raytheon to function, there'll be a nominal fee as a membership. So, whether it's $2.99 or $3.99 a month, you'll have access to us, the editors of the District Sentinel, to follow up on these stories that you care about. And as readers, you have a stake in what's going on at the Sentinel. I mean, you're a member of the co-op. As a co-op, our decisions will be democratized in the same way that our news gathering process is democratized. So
this is how the New York Times should be run.
Right, and that's what I was getting at in the beginning. Is there's not many organizations run this way nowadays, and as a result, because they rely on these corporate funders rather than their readers to determine what stories are important, they're chasing story. They're more focused on Donald Trump than the fact that we're probably going to miss our Afghanistan withdrawal timetable right now if you look at the way the generals and the administration is talking about this issue.
Right. Or bid to cut $1.7 million for victims of mortgage crises thwarted by Senate revolt. Another one of your stories from this week.
Yeah, that has to deal with the transportation bill. There was a move to get funding for that by cutting a fund that went to homeowners who were just leveled by the mortgage crisis.
It has to be Republicans behind this.
It was. And the interesting thing is some Republicans mounted a revolt against it and actually said this is not a good idea. And McConnell went to the floor and withdrew the amendment, and they went elsewhere for funding.
Whoa. Yeah. The congressional Republicans lining up multiple backdoor attacks on net neutrality. Another story at the top of districtsentinel.com.
Yeah, and this isn't really surprising at all. You've seen over the last few months since the FCC issued their net neutrality rules, Republicans in a number of forms through legislation, through riders on appropriations bills, are just trying to weaken the FCC's enforcement mechanisms to make sure that internet service providers treat all traffic equally and that Comcast isn't getting their content faster than the District Sentinel is able to get their content out to readers.
There you go. Because Republicans are wholly owned subsidiaries of corporate America, and corporate America wants to own the internet.
Yep.
Sam Sachs, co-founder of the District Sentinel, districtsentinel.com.